Hello world. It's Saturday the 21st of January 2023 and we're looking at a forecast for the magic soaring weather at Worcester for tomorrow, Sunday the 22nd of January. As I look at the sunset on the mountains out the window, I can see on the chart that we have a stonking day at Worcester at 2 o'clock. We have an inversion that's close to 8,000 feet and a gentle southeaster breeze coming in, perhaps 5 knots all the way up. Thermic day, but it looks nice. But just looking at 11 o'clock, just to see when this day actually starts, you could launch quite early. That's 11 o'clock is already up to 4,500 feet. So if the Grand Prix grid is a bit late, then the private gliders might want to launch before the Grand Prix grid, and they should probably come to briefing at 10 o'clock to establish the procedures. By 5 o'clock we can see that it's breaking up. There is some sea air coming in, and we can see that the southeast is nosing in at over 20 knots at 2,000 feet, and some high moisture but not quite cloud. Let's first look at the cloud, because that will be the biggest effect on the choice of tasks tomorrow. You see about 2 o'clock we already have some cloud approaching Worcester. This is high cloud, about 8,000 feet, and it drops off as you get to Robertson. That's already about 4,000 feet, and it's much lower south of the Rufisona Mountains. Let's zoom in a bit. Can have a look at that. Let's zoom out rather. We can see that from Robertson eastwards is already, Swellendam is sitting, I think, around 3,000 feet at 2 o'clock. So you could go east for a little bit, but you'd have to turn around quite soon. By 5 o'clock we can see that this cloud, this is at 3,000 feet here, is already on Robertson Spur. So Robertson Spur will probably be in cloud by 5 o'clock. And it's moving out over the valley, although with some blue holes, until we get this interesting line near Vaihook. We'll come back to that a little later. That's sitting at 7,500 feet. Just zooming out at 5 o'clock, just a confirmation that all of this is clagged in, and we probably won't get to task that direction tomorrow. Let's look at the wind. We can focus on the winds to the north because we can't go too far east. We can see this is on the Porterville Ridge. We have this light turquoise, which is 6 to 8 knots, and the darker green is 8 to 10 and touching 12. And at 2 o'clock we can see that wind works quite nicely down to, this is around Mitchell's Pass, not Mitchell's Pass, Bainskloof Pass. I think that one's Bainskloof, and the tunnel comes through about here. So down to Bainskloof looks good. After that it gets a little bit complicated. To the east we can see that the southeast is coming in already. If you cross Robertson Spur at 2 o'clock you can going to get some turbulence. Interestingly enough, the Victoria Peak Ridge is actually quite light at this time. Just zooming out, we'll worry more about the northern ridges, and we can see that Renosterhoek is this turquoisey color, and going on towards Tulbach is a more of a green. So we've got 6 to 8 at Renosterhoek, 8 to 10 at Tulbach, all the way down to about Bainskloof. Looking at 5 o'clock, they see that the wind has swung around a lot more southerly, and on these northern ridges it's actually more southerly than southwest, and it will get quite parallel to the ridges, which will affect them during the course of the evening. The wind in the Worcester Valley is also gushing in here. See, it's quite strong to the east of us, and we will see this is now 16-18 knots over Worcester by 5 o'clock. Zooming out, we can see Clava is getting a bit more, but the rest of it is this, say, 10 knots. So the wind picks up a little bit in speed, but it veers around to be a more southerly wind. Looking at, I'll come back to this one. Let's look at some soundings first. Okay, we're going to start at this end, which is Tolbach. Now, just a small comment on how our ridges work and what we look for when we're looking at these soundings. There are three things that make our ridges work. There are three factors, and if they all add up together, then we get the real magic weather. And that's first thing, we need some wind, and it's typically, we can say 15 kilometers an hour or 8 knots would keep a loaded glider, modern glider with water ballast, flying comfortably straight without slowing down along the ridges. The second component we need is a wind that has a component that blows onto the ridge. So this now southwester has a component onto the north-south ridges that we have. The third component is some instability. Now we have unstable layer up to 6,000 feet, which is also good. If the unstable layer is higher than the ridge, then it works really nicely, but the Bitzenberg is a pretty magic ridge, and it'll work nicely in this condition that we're looking at now. So let me carry on. Tolbach at 5 o'clock, we can see that the wind has a shear and change of direction at 4,000 feet, and the speed drops. So that's one of the factors has been compromised. We still have some wind, and we still have the thermic. So the thermic alone should keep it going, but it'll be a little bit different. Porterville, 2 o'clock is very south, so it's missing one of those components, but it's in inversion well above the height of the ridge, and a fair, I think that is 8 or 10 knots of wind, which should be just about enough. Porterville at 5 o'clock, it's gone totally southerly, and yeah, this wind shear is still above the ridge, and you can thermal up if you need to climb back home. Worcesterhoek, the ridge direction swings around a bit, so it should work with this at 2 o'clock, and the ridge is quite low. And at 5 o'clock, similar, still working. Clan William, that's in the Cederberg Mountains, and we have an inversion of 4,500 feet, which is a touch low to go transitioning into the Cederberg, and the wind is very south, so you'd have to find some more south-facing slopes to make it work. By 5 o'clock, the wind has picked up, still very southerly. Clava, the wind is very southerly. The Clava ridge itself is a very low ridge with few landing options, and it's best only to use that ridge when you have a very clear indication that it's working, which there it might be, but here at 5 o'clock it's probably a bit dodgy. Just looking at Robertson, if you go east, there's already some sign of cloud at 2 o'clock, and by 5 o'clock it is below the height of the spur. Swellendam is already at 3,500 feet at 2 o'clock and totally cut off by 5 o'clock. So not much option to go east. Just quickly looking at options going inland, that might be another possibility. We can see that this is Dedurance. We won't actually go there, but it's quite thermic. In the Ceres Valley, it's blue, and the actual working height is from 2,000 to 7,000 feet, with some wind shear in it, so not very fastest conditions. It picks up later in the day with some clear instability, 6.5, 7,000 feet. That looks a bit better. Towes River looks quite nice at 2 o'clock, but light winds with the wind shear. And by 5 o'clock, it's broken up. This is sea air that's come in with that southeaster that's nosed in over here, and it's actually cut off the source of the energy. It's cooled down the ground and the source of the thermal. So the flatlands at Towes River will stop working by 5 o'clock. This is one Squirstian, which is deep in the Karoo, and actually looks quite nice if the contest directors want to go that far. I'm going to come back to this. This is the maximum up and down motions. It basically indicates convergence, and we can see some interesting convergence lines. There's this one near Vaihook, and there's some others further inland. And if I go back to the surface wind at 2 o'clock, which is at 5 o'clock, sorry, this is the 5 o'clock chart, which is that one, we can see that we have this wind, the southeaster meets the southwester right over here where that convergence line is indicated, and there's some more of these convergences further inland. So that might come into play with your planning for the flight tomorrow. It's going to be an interesting day. Fly safely and have fun.